All right. Well, welcome to Roundy's Rants, Raves, and Reviews. We're excited to have with us here Marcus Williams, who is a dear friend of mine. And will you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, where do we start?
This is true. You've got a lot of hats.
Yeah, I do have a lot of hats. I retired from federal law enforcement, which is totally different direction than the kind of creative direction I'm going now. But now I'm an independently published author, and then I'm also working on some book related startups and just loving the opportunity to kind of do what I love and do what I want to do and create the things that I want to create and do that and work a lot in community theater and just explore the more artistic side of me now than I could when I was in law enforcement. Yeah, I just do a lot, I guess.
You, da- you say you dabble in a little bit of everything here right
Yeah.
now. And that, well, I was interested because when you said what you'd like to rant about and stuff like this, one of those is independent authorship and being an author in this journey that you've been on with writing and stuff like that. Will you tell me more about it and what some of these issues you're dealing with?
Yeah, my first book, there wasn't even a thought in my mind that I wanted to write a book or that I wanted to be an author. It was actually while I was still a cop and I was away from home on the job for 3 months. I'd work during the day, go home to the hotel, work out, eat dinner, and then I had nothing to do other than watch TV or read by myself in the hotel room. So I just started writing. And that my first book came from that and didn't really edit it, didn't really do anything, just threw it on Amazon just for giggles. And I got a couple of people that read it and whatever. And then 10 years later, about when I decided I wanted to actually do this, I took the book off and rewrote it and edited it and went through it again. And at that point, I was thinking, should I try to submit my book to publishers? Should I stick with the independent and just do it more seriously? And I well, partially it's because I don't like being told what to do. So I didn't want a
You'd had enough of
publisher.
that.
Yeah, I didn't want a publisher telling me what to do or what I had to write, what was good or wasn't good. And then the other half was a lot of the books that were coming out of the big publishing houses, like I didn't see myself in them at all. Their libraries, the bestseller lists, most of it had no interest to me. And so I started thinking, if that's the stuff they want, then I'm not it. And I could query my books to agents for the next 5 years and never get anywhere because clearly that's not what they're looking for. Or I can just do it myself. So I decided to go independent. It just fits me better. And my son in that time frame actually graduated with a degree in editing and publishing. So I had an in-house editor, which was nice because that's the biggest expense when you're self-publishing. And I love the design work. So the covers, I really enjoyed making my own covers and doing that design work and the artistic side there. I've got the editor that works through it. So independent publishing really fit for me. But as I have watched other people struggle with that same decision, I get, I don't know if angry is the word, but when I look at what the big publishers are looking for and what they're putting out, it it's so frustrating because they don't actually care about new stories or different stories. They just, it's like the people whose job it is to pick just want books they want to read. They don't care about anybody else. And yeah, I'm a big proponent and I try to read a lot of indie published authors and I find a lot of that work is as good or better than published works because it's stuff I want to read and it's instead of what a publisher's telling me to read. So that's how I came to the decision and it's been the right one for me.
What have you faced with being an independent author with the struggles, setbacks, or any things that pitfalls people should be aware of? What are some things that you really think people should understand and know about independent authoring?
So I think the biggest one is just the reputation that indie authors have of being not as good or not as quality of a product. I think that's changing as independent authors. It's so saturated and it's so easy to publish the indie authors have found that they actually have to do the work of hiring an editor and formatting their book and getting a good cover and all of that work. You can't just throw up a document anymore. But that reputation still lingers. So when people hear you're indie published, they automatically have this, oh, that means you couldn't get an agent. So you must not be any good. Well, no, I didn't actually try to get an agent because I didn't want one. So that's, I think, the first hurdle is overcoming that reputation. The second one is that it is expensive still, right? If you're traditionally published, they're paying for the editor, they're paying for the book cover, they claim they're paying for marketing, although they don't. And that's something that they trick you with, so don't fall for it. But you think you're getting this full package deal, but you're really not. And at the end of the day, you're not making as much money anyway because they're taking a cut. So you just have to, if you have to walk into it with your eyes wide open, and there's tons of videos on YouTube, there's tons of websites, people out there to help. I've got a series on kind of my experience indie publishing on YouTube. As long as you know what you're getting into and you do it right, you're going to be fine. And then your biggest hurdle after that is the marketing. But the thing is, if you traditionally publish, you have the same problem. So you're not solving that by going the trad route, right? They'll like put out a news release for your book, and that's pretty much it. Unless you get a lot of hype, they're not going to do any extra work or spend any money on ads for your book. And they'll even say in the contract, you're responsible for marketing your book. So you have to do that anyway. So why not be in control of what your product and your story and everything else?
Absolutely. I know that's one thing that I found, especially with one, I was always nervous going into indie publishing because of that reputation. It's like, do I even try that? Because,
Yeah.
but then again, getting your book out there, and I was like, I'll never get published because of that. So the only way was to really do that and facing those things. But yeah, that was the thing I found most interesting was that you think that big publishers are going to be marketing and they've got all this money for PR and all these things because but they don't, and
No.
especially now because they don't have commercials like they used to do anymore. They don't have the book tours like they used to do all the time with authors. Those have pretty much almost disappeared. So there's really nothing left, and it's all social media marketing nowadays, which
Yeah.
even I can figure that out.
And essentially, look at walk into a bookstore. If you're a celebrity and pretty much already have an audience, then you're guaranteed a book deal. And those are the books they push because those
Mhm,
are the books that make the money. Doesn't matter how interesting or well written the book is. It's because it's all about using that celebrity's name to sell books. Another frustration I have, and I don't know if you've seen this or not, but if I found that there's a belief that only women read, and which is just not true.
right.
But if you walk into a bookstore or a library and you look at that front table or the decorations in the library, almost every time it's for a female audience. The kind of the action adventure stuff that or action stuff that men would like or be drawn to, those books are never on that front table. It's the romance or romantasy or cozies, and I like
Mhm,
a lot of those books. I read a lot of those books, but they don't market to or advertise to men walking through the door. It's to women walking through the door. I don't know if it's because men find their books different ways and don't go into stores, or if I don't know. I don't know what the reasons are, but I find it difficult to get my books out there because of my audience. Anyone can enjoy them. I've had men and women both read them, but they're not covers. Like you can see the covers behind me. They're not covers that would end up on the front table of a Barnes and
mhm.
Noble, which
Yeah.
just annoys me because I
Well, and
read, you know,
right, yeah,
men
and
read.
that's and it's funny because even say teaching the junior high, yeah, a lot of kids, but actually right now my class that I've got, half of my big readers are boys. but finding books that boys will read. Boys like reading their fantasy, like you said, and stuff like that. But also, girls will don't mind reading stuff that's traditionally for boys too,
Right.
either. And so, the fact that they don't push more of those types of things, we say that there's a problem, but then we don't, help that problem of putting things out there that would be good for helping to encourage those type of readers to find enjoyment and something that they could appreciate. Because I don't think it's always just that they don't want to read. It's they're not interested in what's being put out there, especially on that front table. If they walk in and that's what they're seeing, of course they're walking right back out.
Right.
It's
And even if it's a book that they would like, the cover is not designed to appeal to them.
exactly.
And that makes a difference. It doesn't matter how many times people say you don't judge a book by its cover, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
And if you see a book that's, oh, that's not for
Mhm.
me, you're not going to pick it up. And ever since I've started designing my own, I pay attention to which kind of covers I'm drawn to. And it's funny because there are books there's a style of cover that I always pick up that would be marketed more towards women as well. Is I don't know. I just pay attention to it more now,
Mhm.
just because I'm in that space. But that makes a difference. And if they don't see a book in front of them, they're not going to pick it up. I One of the things I did is I got my a couple of my books into the local library. I think one of them is because it gives you credibility that your book's in the library, especially as an indie author. But then, and I also got a couple into the local high school library. And so I went to the librarian once and asked her, like, does anyone check them out? Or are they just gathering dust? What's happening? And it was funny because the one that I didn't quite expect, she said, is always off the shelf. It's always checked out. And it's the Western.
Oh, really?
But
Okay.
but if you look at book sales and stuff, Westerns are almost exclusively purchased and read by like males 50 and over. But yet in the high school, that's the book, not the adventure one or anything. It's the Western that the high school kids are checking out. And
That's interesting.
yeah, I thought that was super cool because it's probably my favorite one too. Because I grew up reading Louis L'Amour books in junior high and high school and loved them. So
Yeah.
I was like cheering inside that that's the one checked out. But if you asked a book marketer who your demographic is for that book, they would tell you older male readers because those are the only people who read Westerns. But
Yeah.
apparently not.
I know I've got a set of Louis L'Amour's on my bookshelf, and every time I've got some more of the cowboyish kids who are like, I don't read anything. Well, do you like you're a cowboy? You like rodeos and stuff? Yeah. Here's a Western. Here.
Yeah.
And if I
And
can
they're
get
not too
them
long.
start on it.
Yeah. And most of them are pretty short. He's got some long ones too, but
Yeah.
they're quick. They're pretty easy to read and they're great stories. Like you get hooked. I think I've read he put out a lot of books. I think I've read all of them at least twice, if not three times.
So talk about a prolific writer. And that was one of my next segue. Perfect here is the people that influenced you. And so Louis L'Amour was one of those influences for you.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more why. What drew you to those stories and influenced you that way?
He Because he just wrote such great stories, but he had a very firm grasp of right and wrong, good and bad. And the good guys didn't always win. They got beat up, they got shot, whatever. But there's very clear morals that run through his books, the very clear being responsible for yourself and your own actions and taking care of yourself and your family. And just all of that stuff would be packed into these little stories. And I found his characters were characters that you'd want to be like, especially as a young man, as a junior high kid. I'm like, I want to be a man like Flint. I want to
Hmm.
grow up to be like him because he took care of the people around him and he made sacrifices for the people around him. And the storytelling is just amazing. And then I also was big into mysteries, like when I was younger, even younger than that, the Hardy Boys. I probably started in third grade, and I think I read. There's hundreds now, but I think
Yeah.
I read every one that was available at the time.
I was into
The thr
Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys as well. So
Yeah, Three
yeah.
Investigators, which you can't
Uh-huh.
really find anymore. Those were great. Encyclopedia Brown, and then
Hmm.
Sherlock Holmes. I loved reading Sherlock Holmes books, and so those were always great for me. And then I got into Tom Clancy and political thrillers and stuff as well. But I really liked adventure. And one of my favorite books as a kid was Robinson Crusoe.
Yes.
And I recommended it to my son when he was, I don't know, 11, 12, and he came back. I don't understand any of this. Is so hard to, which I didn't even remember that it was like that. But like Swiss Family Robinson and Robinson Crusoe and Journey to the Center of the Earth, all the Jules Verne and just kind of the adventure, that Victorian adventure. I loved that stuff. That was like, it just make it, your imagination flies. And I never really got into fantasy. I like some, but that's another rant I have is that all you ever see is fantasy.
It's huge right now.
It's everywhere. And like
Yeah.
guys, like magic and like the thing that makes Harry Potter so good and timeless is the fact that it's that magic and fantasy in the real world. It's not
Hmm.
the full. So that's what I'm more like that. If it's I'm down with magic. I'm down with fantastical stuff, but it needs to happen in an actual the actual real world for me to be interested in it. But
Yeah, there's so many now, and so many of them are so similar to each other. It's hard to say, like, it's almost, is this a different story? Like you were saying, it's all the same stories and it's all the
yeah,
same things. And a lot of times now, especially with those where I was loving that you were talking about all those Victorian era adventure things, because I don't think people realize how much influence those still have on current movies and current literature and current things going on in our world. Because the people who are writing read that and are writing stuff like that, then it's influencing them, even if it's not exactly that.
yeah. And if
Yeah.
you haven't read that stuff, even whether you listen to audio books or whatever, listen to Kidnapped and Treasure Island and Swiss Family and go and get those books. Listen to them. They're not super long,
No.
and yeah, they're great. They're so good. A lot of the early Disney movies were those stories, which I
Mhm.
loved. I grew up on those too. So that was, I don't know how many times we went out in the yard and played Swiss Family Robinson
I say,
or
hey,
Davy
I grew up
Crockett
on
or
those
something.
with Disney too. It was, yeah, you watched it and it's bedrock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good stuff. And I think there are kids now that think that fantasy is all that there is because it's so inundated with fantasy that they don't
Hmm.
realize that there are other genres out there that they would really enjoy.
And that's a thing I struggle with because so many times in education right now, they're like, let them read what they want. They need to be able to choose. And I said, you know what? That's great. They should be able to do that. But at the same time, we need to give them some of these classics and some of these things that they would never pick up because it's amazing once they read it,
Hmm.
how much they're like, I would never have read this. And I'm so glad I did because it opens up their worlds to another thing that they would never have thought of doing.
If you let them choose, you're basically saying choose from these six things instead of giving them 20 things that they didn't know that they're missing. Like
And then they get
they don't know what
chance.
they're missing unless you actually make them read. And I get it. I get that it's a lot harder for a kid to want to read something they have to read. But, what if you have a choice? You can pick from one of these 15 or one of these 20, but you have
Right.
to read one of whatever, give them a
Hmm.
little bit of choice. But they just don't know. They don't know what's out there. I try at least there's some famous books that I've never read because they were never so I try to force myself. Like I finally read Jane Austen a year ago because
Okay.
I never had any interest in Jane Austen.
Regency romance.
Yeah, but it's a classic. And
Right.
so I finally buckled down and I read it and it was fine. It's not my cup of tea, but I've read it now. And
Yeah.
so I'm familiar with it. I read Crime and Punishment finally again because it's on, but you don't know unless you've read it, and you better understand the world when you try new things and you try different books and different authors. And I just think kids don't. It's just too easy to pick up the that book on the front table.
Hmm. Or the GameCube or whatever else,
Right.
the phone in their hand to scroll through. And they get TikTok book or book TikTok or whatever, and that's all they do. That's how we know our literature nowadays is through a TikTok reel, which is sad. It's so if it would only inspire them to go and actually pick up the real thing, then I'd be like, okay, but it's not, I've not seen that translation yet.
Yeah, and there's a time and place for that stuff
Yeah,
too, I think. I'll scroll social media at times too, and part of it because I have to be on it to for the
sell our
books,
stuff. Yep.
but I'll scroll it too. And then there's other times where I've found when reading works for me. And when I was working long hours, it was always on my commute listening to books. Now it's when I'm out in the garden working or working around the house. I'm always listening to books. How many people are listening to current podcasts, which are good too? I do that as well. But
Put on a good
could,
audiobook.
yeah, find a book. And I found that the books that I couldn't get through physically, a physical book, I could get through in an audiobook
Right.
as I was driving or something. Like I read Game of Thrones, the
Mhm.
first one, just to see what it was all about. And I couldn't get through the print edition. It was too
Mhm.
much. It's the high fantasy stuff that I'm not as
Into,
into
right. Yeah.
anyway. But I was able to get to it through it in an audiobook. And now when people were talking about it, I could talk intelligently about it because I've actually read
I
it.
I actually know what's going on in
Right.
the text.
And I didn't have to be exposed to all the stuff that was in the TV show.
VidAngel was my friend. I'm just saying.
And that kind of segues a little bit into
Yeah,
my current project.
absolutely.
So a friend and I we were talking about like how can you just have access if I just want access to books that I know are clean or appropriate to read, then I'm not going to get surprised. What would that look like? And we started down this road of trying to figure that out. Because I still have a memory of when I was probably 13 or 14, one of the leaders at church knew I was a big reader. So he gave me this thriller. He said, "Oh, you'll really like this. You like Tom Clancy and stuff." And I read it, and there was like a very graphic scene in it that was very shocking to me at the time. And I didn't think anything about it because the guy who gave it to me, I
Was
trusted
a leader. Yeah.
and I wouldn't think and he probably didn't even remember that was in there. He
Mhm.
probably just, but that stuck with me. And so this friend and I were talking about how can we do that to avoid? And we talked about we could build a library that only had clean books in it. And then we started a podcast. It's called the Clean Library Podcast that people can check out. And we were talking to authors. What does that mean? And the big question was always, what is clean? And we found that there's a massive variation, even among authors who consider themselves as clean authors, of what that means language,
Right.
sex, violence, all that stuff. So we concluded that if we ever wanted to build a library, we would have to actually be able to rate the books so that we knew whether they would be appropriate for the library. So it took us down a completely different path and we started on this project. How do we do that? Because your big problem is there are probably billions of books that have over that have been printed since the beginning of the printing press. Millions are put out every year. So how do you build a system that can rate any book the exact same? Because right now it's you go on Amazon or you go on Common Sense Media or Goodreads or something, and you have to read reviews. And
If there's been the reviews left.
yeah, and those reviews are usually I liked it or didn't like it, not what kind of content was in it.
Correct.
And if there is a review about what kind of content, you don't know the person, so you don't know if you trust their interpretation of the content.
Even if you
And
do know the person, you might not
well,
trust
clearly.
clearly.
So we came up with an algorithm, a rating system that rates five different categories and six different categories with five tiers in each category from non-existent to severe or nothing to a lot, depending on what
Mhm.
it is. And then we've spent almost a year working to using AI. How do we make this work so it's consistent and objective and gives the same results every time and creates a product that people can actually look at and at a glance know what that means. The
Mm.
rating system is useless if you don't know what it means when you look at it. So we've created we've created that, and we're working on launching it here soon. Um,
Yay.
and yeah, so we're at the point where we're looking at how do we launch it, what books do we pick first, and there's a lot of questions there, and how do we monetize it so that we can actually provide the service because it costs money to have the servers and
Mm.
run the AI and to host it and all that other stuff. And we found a solution that works really well. So we're really excited that we're almost ready to launch.
That's exciting.
And we called it Boada, Bookrata. So look forward to that.
It's exciting.
We're at the point where we're going to start doing social media and everything to try to get the
That's
word out there. But
awesome.
any any book, we can run it through that system, and it'll be the exact same, rated the exact same way as every other book. And the cool thing is, with 6 categories with 5 tiers each, that's like over 15,000 permutations.
Yeah, it
So
is. That's a lot.
so you can find whatever you want. If you're okay with language, but you don't want any sex, don't want, if you're okay with smoking and drinking, but you don't want violence, like you can change all of those categories to what you want and find the books that fit what you're looking for.
That is incredible. And I'm excited because I want to use it now because I'm like, you need a book, kid? Here we go. Let's do this. There we go. Let's plug in the
Yeah. So
numbers and a little
so if you are an
advocacy.
author and you're interested in helping us beta test and stuff, you can reach out to me, and we'll be reaching out to a lot of the authors that we know as well here soon.
Perfect. That's
But
awesome.
yeah, that's we're hoping that not just not only does it give you like the content that you want in your head without being surprised, you'll find new books, right? Because you'll say,
Yeah.
what books fit my standards? And all these books will pop up that you've never heard of before. And you're like, I know I'm not going to be surprised. I know it doesn't have anything I don't want it to have in it. So I'm going to try it out.
And that's the biggest worry sometimes is I'll go in and I'm like, do I even try reading these books? Because I don't know what's in it. And it's so much nowadays, especially anything that's written for adults, is you
Well,
just never know. And
even
so
YA, they say it's YA. So you think, oh, teenagers, young,
exactly,
so
I'm
it's fine.
safe.
And it's hardcore.
Yeah.
You're not safe.
Yeah.
It's
No, I'm gonna go back to the classics where I know what's in them. At least I know what I'm getting when I'm reading Shakespeare. And
right. And even in the classics, they had stuff in them.
I
They
did.
just
Yeah.
were much more subtle about it, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes it
Yeah.
was, yeah, definitely not as blatant
Right.
in your
Right.
face as it is now. You also, besides doing all of that over the last year, you've also written and published a new book
Yeah.
and everything. And I was reading through the sample that you gave me, and I love your style, but I noticed that it had a lot of some of your past experiences in it. How has your past job influenced the stories that you tell in your books?
So I've yet to write a crime thriller, and I have an idea for one, but it's probably still a little fresh. I did my work, I investigated crimes against women and children, so it was heavy stuff. But I do have an idea. It's loosely based on one of my past cases. But a lot of it I'll have, whether I've got police in there, but the series and the one I just released was book 5, the final book of the series. The series takes place in all over the world, and a lot of those places were places that I lived, that we were actually stationed, where we were
Mm,
stationed. Like the Flaming Grenade is the book 1 of the series, and it takes place in Sicily, where we lived for 3 years. And then the next one, Katana's Edge, takes place in Japan, where we lived, and a lot of the places and things in that book were things that we saw and experienced while we were there. So there is a lot of my experience in there, which was funny when my wife first read the book. She's, recognize this experience. I recognize that, but
even the
nobody else
first part I
does.
was reading about Northern California and Half Moon Bay and all that, because
Yeah,
I lived up there in Fremont for a while, and I was like, this is, and it was so beautifully described and things like this, as well as the characters that were doing. Your word choice was absolutely excellent. But I was like, I saw, I'm like, I know exactly where this is.
Yeah.
I know exactly what we're describing here. So like this,
Yep.
do you find that any of your characters come from people or experiences or yourself in any way, shape, or form?
Oh yeah, there's probably quite a bit of me in them and other people I know. Absolutely. And Half Moon Bay was, we would go there, I don't for Halloween. We'd go,
Mhm.
they had this giant pumpkin patch. So I just loved going there as a kid and going over the mountains into Half Moon Bay. It's just, it's beautiful. But yeah, absolutely. And I think you have to be a little bit careful, that it's not too close to someone that they think that it is. But your experiences are going to influence who you are, so you should use them in your writing to tell the stories. One cool thing is in the series, but also in the Westerns. So the Western's not part of the series, but the characters are connected. Like
Oh, okay.
his ancestors are the people in the Western,
Very
and he
cool.
ends up finding a journal that connects that. A lot of the names, it's amazing how many names you have to come up with when you're writing a book.
Yeah.
But a lot of the names, I open up my family tree and I pull names from my family tree, and especially when they're around that time period.
Mm.
So there's a character in the Western who was named after one of my pioneer ancestors. And my ancestor came from Scotland, and then that's where I made that character immigrated to the
Mhm.
West from Scotland. And so there's a lot, it's not based on her life, but there's a lot of little things from her life in that are connected connected in that character. And it's really cool because then you end up doing research on your family in
Mm.
order to inform the characters as you're writing them. And that was a lot of fun. So there are a lot of characters that are named after or come from the same place. Like I was in Scotland because my son lives in England now, and we drove up to Scotland and we took a ferry out to one of the islands where that clan comes from. And a lot of the book happens on that little island where potentially my ancestors used to live. So
Very cool.
that was really cool.
That is so awesome. Yeah, I was reading that first little bit there and I was like, oh, this sounds, I was like, how much of this is coming from his experiences and stuff? I was like, it's cool, especially because
Yeah.
you're dedicated to all of the law enforcement and stuff like that in your life. And I was just like, okay, let's see
Yeah.
where this is going. It's fun to see. I love actually, I've been loving reading authors and talking with them and seeing how much of them is in their books. And it's, I think if you read a book, you get to know an author sometimes, and you just didn't realize how much you get to experience who they are in their hearts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think
And
that's a
lot of my books started not as a story, but as a feeling.
mm,
Like I want to create this feeling, and then the story built itself around that. Rattlesnake Rock is a thriller that came to me as I was driving through New Mexico, and it takes place in the area that we were driving through. I was on a long road trip to Texas, and the whole story came to me while I was looking at the landscape where the story took place. Yeah, it's cool where the inspiration comes to you from. The I've got a middle grade detective series since I loved Hardy Boys so much. I was like, I've got to do that. So I've got two books in that series, and it takes place up in Washington State where we lived for 4 years, and right in the area where we lived. Just
I love that. The inspiration for authors comes from so many different places, and each of us gets that unique in a unique way, I think. And that's I'd never thought of having it come from a feeling in that way, and but I love it. It's exactly it because that's what we want to convey, and to have that story come around that, it's perfect.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't script my stories out at all. I'll have an idea or a feeling, and I just go with it and build the characters to fit that. There's one that's very different from all my others. It's a slow burn suspense, but it jumps ahead 6 months before and then back and then three
Hmm.
months. And it was that whole story was built around a feeling. So my wife jokes and says it's the emotions book. But no, it's not.
You're
But
the
it
emotions
really,
author.
but that that whole story, even though it's a suspense, was completely designed around a certain feeling or what I wanted people to feel as they're reading it or what I wanted the characters to be feeling. Yeah, it's crazy. Different ideas come to me from very different places. And as an indie author, I can do that. I can write different genres because I can write whatever I want.
And that's true because so many times you get stuck and pigeonholed, and then when you go to try to write something else, they're like, "We can't do that, and we won't publish it because it's so different." And yet, why limit yourself if you've got a good story? It's a good story. It shouldn't matter.
Yeah. Like even famous J.K. Rowling, her current series, which is really good, is under a pen name. It's on Robert Galbraith. And because her name is so associated with Harry Potter that she can't write anything
Anything
else
else?
under that name.
She can't even say anything, but out loud because of everything with their name.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that's I love that you've been able to find and explore those different genres though with being an indie author, and it's given you that freedom to do. Because now I'm going to go back and read some of your stuff and go, now I'm looking for the emotion now that I know this, I'm like, oh, now I need to go and do this in a different way. It's have to be cool and fun stuff. Is there a message or a theme that you find that you have come through most of your books, or that you try to share with people, or that you want to leave our audience with as we come to a close here?
Yeah, I think probably a running theme through all of my books is no matter what your protagonists, what they go through, whatever genre it is, there's always struggles and hardship and stuff they're going through. But mine always have a very hopeful and positive outcome. And I think there's definitely a time and place for books that don't, because that's real life. But I don't know, that those are the stories that I really want to tell. So whether it's an action adventure that's just more for fun, there's still positive role models in their positive messaging that I try to portray. So whatever, whichever book you pick, whichever genre it is that I've written in, that thread, I hope, can be seen throughout.
That's very cool. Last message to anyone who's looking to write or do anything, what would you tell them?
To write, you can't you can't plan to be a writer. You have to write. So if you're young and you love it, write stories, write scripts, write whatever it is that you enjoy, write it to flesh out your style and your how you like to tell stories. So stop talking about it and actually just sit down and write.
Do it.
And everyone's different. Some people they get through one page and they're done. They're exhausted. Other people can go through marathon sessions. I'm pretty quick, but you don't have there's no right or wrong way to do it as long as you're actually sitting down and writing.
That's awesome. I love it. And then watch your series on YouTube if they need help with indie series, independent authoring and
Yeah.
publishing.
Yeah, my website is just marcuswilliamsauthor.com and pretty much links to everything are there. So I've got a series you can reach out to me to if you can't find it, and I'll point you to it. But it's just stuff I learned broken down into videos and lessons that hopefully will help someone else because there's a big learning curve. So use the hard work that others have done to make your life easier.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan about working smarter and not harder.
Yes.
And if someone's already made it for me, let me use that for
Yeah.
sure.
You don't need to
Very
figure it
cool.
out all yourself.
Very cool. You've launched a new book, the fifth in the series. You've got your podcast going. We've got a new app coming out. We've got all these things. Any audiobooks? Since
I've
you
done
like to listen, are there any audiobooks of your stuff coming out at all?
I've done two already, and I would
Cool.
like to this winter do at least one more.
That's awesome.
It's
Love it.
really tiring on your voice,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. And even
it's
my
a lot of
short one
fun.
was just exhausting.
Yeah. So the Snow Falls Soft on the Hidden Valley, is available on audiobook, and then one of the middle grade, the Grounded Detective ones, is available. And another thing that I'll put out there is if you go to my website or other authors' website and they offer it to purchase on their website, please purchase it on their website instead of on Amazon. the you don't even realize the cut that Amazon or Barnes and Noble take. Like you can get it there if that's where you want to, that's fine. But you can go on Audible if you have Audible and listen to them, or if you really want to support me, you can go to my website and buy it directly from me. That way I actually get to keep the money instead of it all going to someone else.
That's it. That is for any indie author, everyone. Hey, purchase from them personally if you can, their websites, book fairs, anywhere they're at, because they'll get a better cut of it. And then also please leave reviews. They need reviews, Goodreads, Amazon, other places. That will help them more than you'll ever know. So if you know an author or if you like what they do, leave a review. So
Absolutely.
very cool.
Uh,
Thank you so much for being
Yeah,
with me
thank
tonight,
you.
Marcus. It's been such a pleasure, and I look forward to reading more of your work and working with you more in the future again as well.
Yeah,
So thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope to see you next week on Roundy's Rants, Raves, and Reviews.
sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.